Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back. Today in this video, I got a complete weapon, item, and mod guide. I certainly think that there are a lot of misconceptions about things that you can do with your weapon. For example, going to Penguin and using the overhaul. I think a lot of people are wasting resources doing this. We're going to talk about that along with the weapons that you get in missions in the open world, along with crafting, even going over to the toy man and doing some re-rolls on the augments. We're going to talk about all of that stuff. Now, there is a lot to unpack, so we got to jump into this. This goes from all the way to the very beginning stages, all the way to expert customization. There is a lot to cover. Some of it you might have known already. Some of it you might not have known. But like I said, the point of this is just to give you a complete exact overview, at least to the best of my understanding as of making this video, about the weapons, mods, and items in this game. So first thing we're going to talk about is weapon manufacturers. Now, besides for notorious items and infamy items, there are 4 manufacturers of all of the weapons in the game. And depending on what manufacturer you get is going to depend on the stats of the weapon. Now, this not only means that damage per hit, but also means critical hit damage, magazine size, and rate of fire. Right here we have combo meal. Now the trait on combo meal is the exact same no matter the manufacturer, but GCPD has a pretty large damage per hit, small magazine size, very slow rate of fire. You go to LexCorp, they have a higher magazine size, a faster rate of fire, and lower damage per hit. And then it goes the same thing with Amertech. The magazine size changes, the rate of fire didn't change for this one, but damage also changed. So keep in mind that when you're finding these weapons in the open world or earning them just because it has a specific trait, it could actually change all of these values, damage per hit, magazine size, rate of fire, and all that stuff, but keep the same trait just depending on the manufacturer. I think one big misconception, which we're going to cover more a little bit later on, is that overhauling these items does not change these stats. It does not change the damage per hit, the critical hit damage, the magazine size, the rate of fire, or the manufacturer of the weapon. I know a lot of people spend a ton of resources doing these overhauls thinking they're changing the damage, but they're actually not. We're going to get more in depth to why this is, and I'm going to show you why this is. But just keep in mind that it doesn't change when you overhaul it. Now, that does not mean that is the exact same every single drop you get in the open world or as a reward. Those do change. And so if you get one specific reward, like a Black Mask Bullet Storm in one of the incursions, and then your next one, you get the same Black Mask Bullet Storm, the damage numbers per item you receive could be different. And so with all of the items that you get, there is a range of values what you can get per drop. Just know that once you do receive it, then you can't change it. Also keep in mind that the augments on each of the items do change the stats. So when you do overhaul items and it changes all of the augments, that could be what you're seeing when you see the damage or the DPS or the damage per hit or the critical hit damage. When that changes, that depends on a lot of things, not just the item itself, but for the augments as well. And so like this particular item, I'll make it quick. It's the exact same thing. Neither one of the augments affect damage per hit, and they were 2 different drops, and both of them have different damage stats. The crit hit damage stayed the same, magazine size, rate of fire, those are going to be the same, but damage can change per drop. Another thing that I've found to be kind of interesting is the crit hit damage, the magazine size, and the rate of fire is all going to be the same on the one manufacturer. So Amertech, if they're doing Amertech sniper rifles, not only are the stats going to be the same, but the look of the item is exactly the same. We have combo meal right here. It's 100% crit hit damage, 10 magazine size, rate of fire of 300. We got giant killer right here. It's the exact same style, the exact same look. The only difference is the skin over the top of it is going to be a little different, just depending on what it is. But same exact thing, 100% crit hit damage. I know this says 140, but keep in mind the augment on there adds the 40%. So it's actually 100%. And then 10 magazine size, 300 rate of fire. It's all the same. Here's another example, GCPD lockup. We have the cooler right here. This is 200% crit hit damage. Keep in mind 22% hit crit or crit hit damage on the firearm from the augment. So it's actually 200. We have 7 magazine size. We have 83 rate of fire. You go down here to combo meal. It's the exact same style, just a different skin. 200% crit hit damage, 50% on the augment, but it's actually 200. And then 7 magazine size, 83 rate of fire. All manufacturers for each particular type of weapon is exactly the same. Another thing that I don't think that people realize is what nano enhancements do to the actual stat, including the DPS. So when they overhaul items and they get, say, a higher DPS, and that's what they're looking at, they don't realize that it's going to depend on the nano enhancements. It's going to depend on the augments. That's what's changing these stats. That's what's changing the DPS. That's what's changing each damage per hit. That's what's changing the crit hit damage after you overhaul it. But the base stats of the item that you already got does not change. And I'm going to show you this. Accuracy. If we were just to add 1 point on accuracy, you see DPS went up. You add another point on accuracy. DPS again went up. Again, DPS again went up. Damage per hit did not change. DPS did, even on accuracy. Another thing that I think people don't realize is that the name of the actual item, or I guess sub name of the actual item, is irrelevant, honestly. This item is called free refills, but depending on which stat you max out first, that is what's the first name is going to be. If we add it to stability, you see that it's called calm free refills up there on, oops, other side up there on the top, calm free refills. If we add one on zoom and then add another one on zoom, it then becomes eagle free refills. If we add 3 on reload speed, it is then going to become faster free refills. So the name of it is going to change just depending on what you add. And the first item that you get to 3, that's going to be the name of the actual item, even when you max out all of the nano enhancements. It's not going to change. You can make it named whatever you want, just depending on whatever item you go to with 3 first. So again, if you look at my damage per hit on this particular item, it's 322 to 350. We add magazine size. You see my DPS going up and up and up. Each one of these things that I'm putting on here, it adds to the DPS, but it's not adding, zoom doesn't add to DPS, but it does add to crit hit damage. And if you add, all of these, the damage per hit does not change, but the DPS does. And so depending on when you overhaul items, depending on what it is, then, and depending on how many nano enhancements it has, and depending on how many augments it has for one particular item, it's going to appear that you got a better roll when in all actuality, you got the same roll. Now take a look at this master winding up. Take a look at the suicide strike damage, 168,000. Also take a look at the other ones, but the suicide strike damage on this particular example is going to be a huge discrepancy. There is nothing in the augments that are changing the item. But if I go down to this other master winding up, then you'll see that the suicide strike damage, 195,000. And there's nothing in the item, none of the augments that are changing that. And so if I thought that, you know what, maybe they change if you overhaul it, well, we're going to overhaul it. 168,440. 168,440. Whoops, I didn't mean to equip it, but we're going to overhaul it again. Another thing, you're going to see some of these stats change, like the suicide strike resource gain. Well, it changed from 95 to 99 because of the augment added 4%. It was still originally 95%, and it was still originally 168,440. The shield harvest damage, also the same. And unless you get an augment that actually changes these numbers, the DPS or the shield harvest damage, the melee hit, the suicide strike damage, it's always going to be the same, just depending on what augments you get, because that was the drop you got. Now looking at the Master Pain Machine SMG, these are two different drops. Now because they're made by the same manufacturer, the critical hit damage, the magazine size, the rate of fire is always going to be the same. It could change if it was legendary, just depending on the manufacturer. But in this particular case, on the Infamy and on the other, special items that you get, notorious items, it's always going to be the same, but damage per hit could change. Now, if we were to overhaul this says 1305. Well, it's not going to change. It's going to be 1305. Now, the crit hit damage could go up. The damage per hit could go up, just depending on the actual augments that are on there. Like this one just got an extra 44% of critical hit damage, so it jumped up to 244. That doesn't mean that this was a better roll. It wasn't. It just had a better augment, or an augment that changed the crit hit damage. If I were to have a SMG overall damage boost, it would change the damage per hit, but it doesn't actually change the roll you got when you receive the item. Now, it's definitely misleading when you overhaul items on legendary stuff, especially if you look at the DPS, because like we just showed earlier, depending on your nano enhancements, the DPS could change. And every time you overhaul it, it is going to change the nano enhancements, therefore making the DPS different. But if you were to take off all of the nano enhancements, like I showed you with all the pistols, all of the DPS and all of the damage per hit is going to stay exactly the same. That's why you should look at the damage per hit. It is 567 for your max, and that is not going to change. Your DPS could change, but that just depends on your nano enhancements, and it's possible the damage per hit changes just depending on the augments. But the roll you got cannot be changed from an overhaul. So then you might ask, well, what good is overhauling? Well, the only purpose, at least so far that I've found in my extensive testing, is to go from 1 or 2 augments to 3. This is going to be the only way you're going to be able to get an item to 3 augments. So you're going to come over here. If you have an item that has 2, you're going to keep overhauling it until you get to 3. Now, here is another thing that is very, very important. The cost in which it costs you to overhaul things goes up the more you overhaul it. And for example, I did the fully loaded, or this Master Turkey Shoot. I did this a ton of times just to show you how high it can go. And as far as how high I've gotten this one, you see 25 legendary items per overhaul. And look at the cost, 500,000 of those coins in order to overhaul it one single time. If you look down at a different item, one that I really haven't overhauled at all, Master Super Spreader, it only costs 7 and it only costs 20,000 of the coins. Same with the other resources. All of those resources go up every single time you overhaul. So all you need to do is overhaul it until you get to 3 augments and you're good. So kind of to sum up what I've learned about getting drops in the world and all of the items you get through missions and all of that stuff, the crit hit damage, the magazine size, the rate of fire, and even the look of the item is going to depend on the manufacturer. okay? And it's always going to be the same, just depending on what item it is. I mean, obviously the pistol and an SMG is going to have stats that are different, but all SMGs made by Amertech are going to be the exact same, no matter what the trait is. This goes with the same with the pistols and the sniper rifles. Depending on the actual manufacturer, you can have the same trait on different manufacturers that's going to have different crit hit damage, magazine size, and rate of fire. But the actual manufacturer, it's all going to be the same. The drops that you get per each of those items, if you have 2 Amertech pistols, the drop that you got at different points, that is going to depend on the damage. So honestly, Overhaul does nothing except to give you 3 augments, and not even the nano enhancements. Don't even look at that. Don't even bother with the nano enhancements. I know it shows that there are 11. Currently, as of making this video, you can have a maximum of 15 nano enhancements. But when you elite an item, every single time you elite an item, no matter what the nano enhancement is, it goes to 15. So you don't have to overhaul something to get it to 15 on the nano enhancement, because it's automatically going to get to 15 when you elite the item through the toy man. And of course, you only want to elite an item that has 3 augments already. And so if you're fishing for the absolute best of your particular weapon, you're looking for the master copy of it, and you pull a master item and you go to Penguin and you overhaul it trying to get more damage, you're just wasting your resources. You're just wasting your resources, because whatever roll you got, that is what it's going to be. In order for you to get better damage, you're going to need to go out and find another one. And it could be worse. It could be better. Goes with same every single one of these pieces, no matter what piece it is. The damage is going to be slightly different. It might be the exact same, but some of them are going to be lower. Some of them are going to be higher. And then you're going to use Penguin to get 3 augments, then come to the toy man, and then you elite it, and then change all of those augments to what you want. So what are the actual ranges of the damage numbers, crit damage, the traversal buildup rate, and all of that stuff? I have no idea, but I know they're different. Okay, and a good general rule to follow is that a master item is always going to be better than a basic item. Okay, and so you're always going to be searching for the master item. Now, I don't think that every single manufacturer makes every single weapon. I think that's only like that on a couple of them. But one thing that is definitely for sure is that all the manufacturers of each particular item or each particular type of weapon, they all look the same and they all have the same basic stats, except for the damage per hit. So you're gonna hopefully find good items, good master items that when they drop, you know, they're gonna have a higher damage. Just be cautious when you are looking at that. When you look at the nano enhancements, because that changes the DPS. When you look at the augments, that also changes the DPS. But I assure you, I have done and spent thousands of legendary materials and other materials overhauling items over and over and over and over again, testing this to see if any of it changed, and it never did. The damage per hit never changed. The crit hit damage never changed. The mag size never changed. The manufacturer never changed every single time I overhauled the item. But again, if I found the same item twice in the open world, the damage per hit was different. Definitely. There are also things like the shield mod, in which all of the things could be different. So the capacity could be different. The pickup amount could be different. The overcharge shield harvest chance, the overcharge decay time, all of those are different just depending on the drop. And so, yeah, when you overhaul these items, it's not going to change it. It's not going to make a difference to those specific stats. The only thing that it's going to change is your augments. And so to find one that has a better turtle shell, you need to either, of course, find the master item, or you need to find something, you know, just find another item out in the open world of the same one that has better stats. So last thing I want to say is that, of course, keep in mind, as of making this video, things could change in the future with future patches, future updates, future items that come into the game, maybe future customization options, etc. But at least as of right now, I am pretty fairly confident that, with as much resources that I've spent and as much testing that I have done on all of these things, pulling all of these items from the open world, crafting all of these different items, overhauling all of these items, running the augments, doing all that stuff. This is how it is, at least as of now. And hopefully it helped you. Hopefully it gave you a better understanding on how weapons, items, and mods actually work and the roles that you get in the world with the items and how many resources you actually waste doing overhauls. Because I know I certainly did. I wasted tons of resources overhauling things, thinking that it was actually doing something, but in reality, it really doesn't, but change the number of augments that are on the item. Also keep in mind, your squad talents and your talent tree for your particular character. That is also going to affect weapons, along with augments that are on your traversal, neck bomb, lucky charm, all of that stuff. That stuff does, again, affect weapon damage, crit hit damage, and all of that stuff. So keep all of that in mind. But like I said, I'm fairly confident that this is how it works because, this is how it works. Anyways, if it did help you, hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to go subscribe over on the Twitch channel because we do stream on Twitch as well as YouTube. And if I missed anything, please let me know in the comments because I hope I hit everything. And if I didn't, let me know. I'll see y'all next time, guys. Y'all take it easy. We're out. Peace.